Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm PJ Trudeau. Uh, Certainly excited to have our consultant joining us today to talk about the strategic role of HR in organizational success. It's definitely an area that all of us want to, I know, as HR professionals, spend more time being strategic, but we don't necessarily always have that time or flexibility to be able to do that. Which certainly can be frustrating at times, but I know that Precious has got some great resources and some great techniques for us. To tell you a little bit more about Precious Middleton, she is the founder and CEO of HR Boutique and Business Services, which is a leading HR consulting firm that's dedicated to empowering small and medium-sized businesses through effective human resource management strategies. With over 15 years of experience in HR leadership and consulting, Precious specializes in helping companies to streamline their operations, to foster employee engagement, and achieve sustainable growth. Previously, Precious served as the Dress for Success brand ambassador for Lane Bryant, advocating for women's empowerment and professional development. She's also the author of Pulling Back the Covers, a book that explores the importance of workplace culture and leadership. Precious is a dynamic speaker who regularly shares her HR and business success expertise. Precious, let me turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, PJ, for having me today. I hope everyone can hear me well, and I hope you have pen and paper so that we can dive in to our session as HR professionals, the strategic role of HR and organizational success. We'll talk about practical strategies for HR leaders and how you can implement these strategies today to your HR department. Next slide, please. So today's agenda, I want you to think boldly, I want you to think strategically, and I want you to think like a leader. Understanding the strategic role of HR, we're going to gain a seat at the decision-making table, and then we're going to align HR initiatives with business goals. And then I'm going to give you some tips about fostering collaboration across departments and evaluating HR's role in innovation and change. And then we'll have a couple polls. So it won't be just me talking. I'll have you interact with me. And we'll learn about strategic planning. Next slide, please. So here I am. PJ did a great introduction to me, but I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and I moved to Maryland to accept a position as an HR specialist back in 2015. In the background, I was working as a SHRM volunteer, and I was doing a lot of learning how to be with SHRM, and I was a volunteer. I wound up raising $5,000 for our silent auction committee. That's when I learned how to develop a team, and then I also was processing payroll in the background. So been very busy trying to grow my career in human resources. And now I'm the proud owner of HR Boutique and Business Services, where I provide virtual top-tier HR solutions. Next slide, please. So you can always visit my website to figure out our vision and our mission, but mainly I want to give back to the youth and give them an opportunity in order to scale up their skills. So I provide also job interview coaching to the youth, the Girl Scouts Nations Council, and then also Workforce Montgomery, where I do volunteer work. But then I also provide strategic consulting and staffing to some of our senior corporations. Next slide, please. All right, so let's go ahead and get your notes, and we'll go ahead and get started with the program today. So understanding the strategic role of human resources management, I like to start off with a definition. So HR is a strategic plan. HR includes strategic planning, which involves the activities necessary for developing, implementing, and managing the strategic direction required to achieve organizational success. And also this success helps create value for the stakeholders. So everyone involved in your organization will benefit from your strategic role as a human resources manager. So the first thing I want us to talk about is talent management. Do we know our numbers? But before I'll get into that, let's go into a poll. The first poll, if we can go to the first poll. So I want you to think about your current position right now. Can you tell me, is your organization, in your organization, how is HR perceived? So one, primarily administrative. Two, a critical strategic partner. Three, somewhere in between. And four, not sure. And we'll just give that just a few moments. Okay, wow.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Um, and PJ, you'll keep the results for a later discussion as well.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
perfect. Thank you. Okay. So it looks like 64% somewhere in between. And with us being HR professionals, I'm going to give us some tips to help us get to more of a critical strategic partner. So we can close that. And if you can go back to the page where it's, yes, thank you. And then I'm gonna close it here. Okay, so talent management. Excuse me. So do you know your numbers in your talent management? Do you know your head count, your active head count? These are things, metrics that you can easily capture through your payroll HRIS system so that you can share with your leadership team. So the first one is, how are you doing your recruiting methods? Are there traditional methods? Are you looking into having more social media, LinkedIn presence, referrals, job boards? Are you keeping up with your the AL technology to help build out some of those administrative tasks, such as job descriptions? AL can help you with developing policies, job descriptions, and also any more administrative tasks. I would take advantage of AL. And also, how are you scoring your talent pool? What is your ratio? Your turnover ratio? Do you know your turnover ratio? Are you able to tell your leadership team about the number of people coming in the organization and the number of people leaving the organization? And for what reason? So those are your metrics I want you to think about. And then you need to also always be thinking about your talent pool needs to be evolving. You should always have a good metric system to know who's coming in the organization and who's leaving and for what reasons. So that brings us to our second point, which is culture engagement. I mentioned already that you need to always have your active headcount and then know some of your costs. Now, we know that HR is not a revenue producing department, but we also know that HR is the most valuable department because we deal with talent management. So if you have your metrics and you know why people are leaving and coming, then that can kind of give you a big picture of your culture. So also, what are some recruiting costs that you might incur in the year? So go ahead and try to think about, are you going to attend job fairs? How much is it going to cost you to post your positions on LinkedIn? How much is it going to cost you to network? right? We still have to get from behind the desk and do some networking. So if you can have those numbers and that budget and that cost before you go to see the leadership team, then they can have a bigger picture and that gets you a seat at the table. Also, I would like to see us have more data-driven decisions. Why are we hiring for this department? What is the ratio? What is the employee engagement around why you're having constant turnover? So one, active head count. What are some of your recruiting costs? And then finally, what is your workforce analytics? So you should be able to produce workforce analytics through your payroll department, work closely with your payroll department in your HRIS system, and learn the workforce analytics that will tell you about your organization. Make sense? You can drop it in the box if that makes sense, or if you have any questions. And then lastly, I also say process-driven systems. So what does your employee handbook state? What is some of the culture norms? And try not to deviate from the cultural norms. That will definitely get you a seat at the table and having a conversation with the leadership team. So in the picture, all of these represent the circle that you see represent talent management, which is an important critical fact for organizations, culture engagement, risk management, and data-driven decisions and process-driven systems. So I want you to plan it, act on it, and do it. Next slide, please. And there should be a poll. Okay, so poll number 2, gaining a seat at the decision-making table. So how often are HR leaders included in strategic decision-making in your organization? 1 is always, 2 is often, 3 is sometimes, 4 is rarely, and 5 is never. I'll give you about less than 30 seconds to answer that.
Sorry, bear with me just a moment.
Oh,
I
yeah, sure. Excuse me.
apologize. I thought I had stopped sharing the other one. I did. Okay.
And PJ, I would like to open up the chat box too if anyone has any questions.
Okay.
It's a lot of information at once.
All right. The polls. I just launched the poll.
Okay, great. Thank you. Wow, sometimes. Okay. We're definitely going to aim to change to sometimes. So with the question being gaining a seat at the decision-making table, how often are your leaders included in strategic decision-making in your organization? You should be included in all the decisions, actually, because of what we just talked about as far as you handling your metrics. If your leadership team has the metrics that we just discussed, they should be having you at the table. So we're going to get you a seat at the table. I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay. So how do you go about building business acumen? Are you speaking the language that your organization speaks? And what I mean by that is, are you talking the mission, the vision, and the values of your organization? Do you know exactly what is happening in each department? Do you have a handle of knowing the daily ins and outs of each department? And the way you do that is you schedule meetings, frequent meetings. I know we're busy, we have a lot of tasks, but our workforce want to know that we are in support of them as well. So no more top heavy instructions. It should come from like a collaborative, supportive system. And you can lead that effort, is what I'm trying to explain. So that's how you build the business acumen is you talk the language, the mission, the vision, and the values. You make sure that your values and goals are in alignment with the business goals. But how do you know what the business goals if you're not involved with the leadership conversations? So I encourage you to set up a meeting with your leader, your top team, your top leadership team, so that you can understand some of their challenges and pain points, and then you can create a strategy around clearing that up, fixing any of those issues. And also, what I've learned in my career is that people want to be involved with communication. They want to talk, they want to have a voice. And if you can show your people that you're just not for the organization, that you are also for the people, the staff that come in and work hard, and you show them appreciation, you will gain influence and advocacy. And as HR, we know there's some things that we cannot discuss due to confidentiality, but we can reward, we can celebrate birthdays, we can ask about families and how families are doing. We can be friendly to a point that we show that we are in support for our staff. So I remember in my career, I used to walk around and people would kind of be afraid, but I want people to embrace HR because HR can be an advocate for the workforce. And then also how you gain a seat at the decision-making table is make sure you have those human resources metrics. So at those board meetings, make sure you have input with what's happening. So you know your metrics that we had just discussed. So here are some top tips for culture engagement, employee well-being. So monitoring your turnover and your retention ensures leadership is aware of what's happening in the space. I'm sorry. Okay. And we're going to go to the next poll, please, Patricia. Okay, so poll number 3. Which HR function do you find most challenging to align with your business goals? And so there are talent acquisition number 1, performance management number 2, learning and development number 3, employee engagement number 4, and allow for you all to participate or specify what is the most challenging. Learning and development. Wow. Employee engagement. Okay. And performance management. Okay, perfect. Let me get my notes. I had made a note that, and let's go back to where it says aligning business goals. I want to give a couple tips, PJ, excuse me.
This slide or
It's right, it's the one before this one. Not this one. Yes. So I made some notes for aligning business goals. So how you also can do that is think about your SWOT analysis. So your strength of each department, your weakness, weaknesses of each department, your opposition, and your threats for each department. I know that's a lot, but we need to have those information so that we can clearly make a strategic decision on how we want to move forward. And then I mentioned mission, vision, and values. You want to make sure that you're in alignment with the mission, vision, and values. So speak the language of your culture. You also can use a balanced scorecard for finance, customers, internal business processes, and learning and growth opportunities in order to get the best return on investment. So all this plays a part of the bigger picture so that you can gain a seat at the table. Next one. I also talk about we can stop right here for 1 second. I also talk about influence and advocacy. I think I had mentioned that prior to, but when your environment is filled with data and information and you're in alignment with leadership, you'll have a clear picture, is basically what I say, and that you can advocate for next steps and improve processes. So when we talk about strategic workforce planning, we want to know, is your strategy effective? Are you able to articulate what the strategy is and get the buy-in from your senior leadership team? Is the strategy efficient? Do you see improved retention? And do you also see productivity coming from your team? And then also when you think about strategic workforce and planning, is what's the impact? What is the overall impact that the organization is experiencing from your strategic planning? Performance management, here are three tips that you can measure performance management and learning and development is that you're measuring the outcome. So by you implementing your new strategic, have you thought about ways to measure is your staff understanding what you're trying to explain through policies, through meetings, and through conversation? Is the communication is it across the organization? Have you had that leadership meeting? Have you had those meetings with your supervisors and directors? And then ultimately they are sharing it with the employees, and then they are bringing you back 360 feedback. And so they understand their job description and then their tasks at hand. And then always being open for a conversation. And then when you think about change management, I've worked in some areas where it was pretty a lot of things were happening at once. Open enrollment was happening with talent acquisition. We had to keep the numbers on talent acquisition, but we also had to keep to remember that the staff is here and they're people first. So things happen in their lives, and we need to be sensitive to things that may happen in their lives and be supportive. So the way you can do that is to test your temperature by doing pulse surveys. And I wouldn't recommend doing them during your evaluation. I would recommend doing them prior to the evaluations, prior to your performance evaluations. You should have a know of what your staff are thinking before they get an evaluation. So that way you can work with the department manager to try to meet a positive objective or meet an objective that works for you, the company, in the team leads. Is there any questions thus so far, PJ?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we talked about strategic workforce planning and how you can start planning the strategicness of your workforce and the outcome. What outcome are you trying to get? And then ultimately, when you have these expectations, you should see them in the performance management of your workforce. And then change management, we talked about having a pulse survey and understanding what is needed, where the temperature is with your employees. Okay, next slide, please. Let's, let's get ready for a poll. So poll number 4, fostering collaboration across departments. How effective is HR in fostering collaboration across different departments in your organization? Okay, good. Good to see. Okay, 64% effective. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. It looks like we're effective in collaboration. And so let's get us to very effective. So fostering a culture of innovation. I think in order to do that, you must communicate what needs to be communicated. You should have a strategy around communication. And then you can adopt agile HR practices, Six Sigma lean practices in your HR function, and then employee engagement. Employee engagement is really understanding how the employee feels about their task and what type of culture do you have in order for them to feel empowered. So here are 3 things that you can do for employee empowerment. So you can have the employees input through surveys. You can have roundtables. So if there is a process that is fuzzy or unclear, for example, we had lots of conversations. I used to work for a school, and there was a conversation about the dress code. And there was a difference between what the leadership team thought that the dress code should be, and then the students thought that the dress code should be. And so the way we was able to have a clear understanding of what our objectives was as far as the dress code was that we had coffee meetings, we had surveys, we had polls, we allowed the employee to voice their opinion because we worked in uh, a urban school. So there was a difference of opinion from leadership versus sorry, there was a difference between the leadership team, the uh, the staff, the teachers, and then the students on the viewpoint of dress code. And so we always had to, we made sure that we communicated in weekly coffee sessions with the leadership team, surveys, and then also the students' opinions. So communication is key. Um, so also let's recognize our employees for the work that they do, for anniversaries, for birthdays, for going over and beyond their job duties, and give them the spotlight. And I think that you can gain influence that way because staff will see you as a collaborator instead of a dictator. And so we also want to look at your process and always continue to improve on your process. So recognize your employees for hard work. And then once you get the leadership team commitment, you also can get their buy-in for some of these initiatives. And again, know your numbers. So what are employees saying in their employee engagement survey? How are they feeling? Have you took a temperature? And do you know the direction of the temperature of the environment? And then take all things into consideration. Have a strategic plan, listen, and then move forward with your plan. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. We'll go ahead and do a quick poll. I believe it is yes. I'm gonna wait to the truck leaves us. So elevating HR's role in innovation and in change. What is the biggest barriers to HR leading innovation in your organization? So one, lack of support from leadership. Two, limited resources. Three, resistance to change. Four, insufficient influence in decision making. And then any others. And I'm going to check the chat. Conversation practices. Oh, good.
We'll give it just a few more seconds before ending the poll.
Yes. Looks like they're still going. Limited resources. Yes, I understand.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Okay, thank you. So a lack of support from leadership. I understand. So the best way to get their support is to have metrics. They want to know numbers. They want to know data. They want to know survey results. Limited resources. Yes, we do have limited resources, but I think you can leverage and work with your other departments to bring all the resources together. Resistance to change. What I would say to that is that they may be resistance to change because they are unaware. And so when I was growing into my career, the first thing I was taught was I always need to educate, educate, educate. And the way you do that is with your metrics, your balance scorecard, your survey pulses, your turnover rate, your metrics. So know your numbers. Okay. And what was the other? It says, please put responses in the Zoom chat. Tasking, leads to lack of time. Absolutely. Let me speak to that. In HR, we look like we are able to handle it all, and we are. But I think we need to have great time management skills. I think we need to be able to strategize what's important. So the first thing would be important to me is your turnover numbers, is your talent acquisition. So, and also the pulse of the organization. And of course, you are going to have tasks that's going to come in that's going to be important. But, you can use your calendar tools in order to prioritize which ones are important. But some things you're just going to have to work through. And I understand that. Okay. Next slide, please. So do you know the culture that you are actually working for? Do you really have a true understanding of your culture? And are you thriving or just surviving, is what I said. So, Sherm explains that in every culture, there is going to be an authoritarian. There also is going to be, um, oh, excuse me, charistic, CHRISTIC type of culture. You may have a participative culture, and you may have a learning culture or a high performance culture. So, what culture do you think that I would love to see what culture you feel like you have that you're working for? You also can have a power top culture, meaning where all tasks are coming from the top to the employees. Tasks are defined, or you can have a collaborative culture, and that is increasing in knowledge, competency, and performance. And then talent is championed, innovation, and customer centric. So drop in the chat box. What type of culture do you feel like you have?
So in the chat, it looks like we have high performance and participation cultures, and then Vanessa said a unique culture.
Okay. I would love to hear more about the unique culture. What is unique? Collaborative. Good. Good. Um, so Vanessa, what makes your culture unique? And we're in a safe space. We're in a HR space, so it's okay if you want to just share a little bit.
We have some high performers and we have some low performers and we have some in between performers and we have those that just ride the waves of other medium to high performers to make
Mhm.
it look like they perform.
Oh, wow. And what do you think that you can do as the HR manager to make everyone a high performer?
We do consensus reviews.
Okay.
So we do a lot of coaching, learning, development. Sometimes we might put them on a PIP
Mm-hmm.
if it's necessary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like PIPs, but I mean, a PIP just really scares a person to make them go look for a job. It does. I've never really seen it work in my past experiences,
Mm-hmm.
so those are some of the things.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I would add to that, I would just make sure that your top leaders, your directors understand the job descriptions, and then they can articulate that information to your employees and staff. So if everyone is clear on what they need to be doing each and every day or each and every month and how it's going to be reflected back into their performance evaluations, then there's really no room for error. So make sure the communication is really good from top supervisors and to your leadership team and to ultimately to staff. Okay, so let's talk about some other data-driven ways to get information about your culture. So data-driven metrics. Set HR performance objectives, which is your SMART goals. Let's not get away from our SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relatable, and time-bound goals. Have you all set, it's the latter part of the year, has anyone on the call set any SMART goals here recently? You can drop it in the box in a chat, please. If you set any SMART goals here recently, I would encourage you to do that. Define your key performance indicators. What is going to make your department shine? And so having those meetings with each one of your employees to understand what are their key performance indicators? What is the business organization's key performance indicators? And so let's have a strategy around that. So measuring where you are and where you want to be based on benchmarks. So where are you and where would you like to see your staff go at the end of the year or by the first quarter? So each department should be able to report back to HR their key metrics so that you can report back to your leadership team. So what are they doing from a day-to-day basis? Are they one, the job description, two, the mission, vision, and values of the organization, and three, are they trying to reach those goals? Are they actively trying to reach those goals? Let's see. And then I say that you should have a 360 feedback. So you set the tone, you set the culture, you set the communication, and it should come back to you that this is what has happened. And then if those objectives are not being reached and there's a number of conversations and documentations, then at the next point I would suggest a PIP. But you should be able to look at admissions department and understand the numbers, the metric flows that makes the admissions department. And that's how you build business acumen. So learning and development, I've seen a survey. I don't have any notes, so I'll just be talking to you from experience. But learning and development is very important in the HR life cycle. The reason being is because if you're not familiar with the expectations that you need to follow, then how can anyone learn and grow into the person that you're looking for them to become while they're at work? So I feel like that how in a busy work environment, how I was able to capture the learning and development is one, did the management team need training? Invest in your managers and encourage them to empower their employees to invest in development as well. So is your organization paying for courses, to leadership development courses, training? Is there an area for improvement with your top leaders? We should know that as HR. Then we have a way of communicating the expectations. Do you have like a Slack team? Are you communicating through your employee handbook? Are you communicating through email? Or do you prefer that we have meetings? So Brian said there's a 360 survey. Yes, 360 feedback. Your culture should constantly be talking and identifying issues and concerns and having that strategic approach. That's correct. So each team should this circle represents each team. So there's open communications. We have a safe, healthy work environment, and we're able to communicate our perspective. Our job as HR leaders is to take the perspective and make it into a strategy and weave it into the company's mission, vision, and goals. Then the team should also have shared responsibility in reaching those goals that we have set aside. And then the shared objectives. So what are the shared objectives that your organization has? So that's how you influence without authority. You're going to have the numbers, you're going to have open communication, you're going to have clear and high expectations for what needs to happen to meet the overall goals. And that's how you influence without authority. Thank you. So the next slide, I believe we're going to drop a poll, please. This will be the last poll. So how confident do you feel about implementing the strategies discussed today? Yay. Good. Great. Neutral. Okay. Well, I'm glad to see you all feel very confident. Thank you so much. And confident is also good. So for the ones who chose neutral, what can I help explain in order for it to kind of turn on the light bulb for us? You could drop it in the box. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the moment and opportunity where I stop talking and I invite you to talk with me about what we just learned today about strategic planning, knowing your numbers and your culture, and then having culture engagement. I would love to hear from one of the participants and then ask any questions that you may.
Precious, if I could go back to Brian's question. I know Sarah had a great response about his 360 survey, which I think is a lot of a challenge for a lot of us, is when you do get those feedback on surveys and what the feedback is specific to leadership, and leadership may be resistant to wanting to hear things that they're doing that staff doesn't like. So how do you go about, other than using data, which is certainly a very neutral way? And I think just from the presentation, obviously, we know that data is a huge driver for us to be able to show our value to leadership. Are there other ways that you're aware of, the other things that we could be doing once we've received this, not challenging feedback or shortcomings, as Brian put it? Are there other things that we could be doing to help leadership understand that these are areas that we still need to continue to work on and develop in, without making it look as though HR is trying to push that initiative when it is something that's coming from the organization?
Yes, thank you, PJ. I think the best thing to do is have a conversation, have that very hard conversation, do what we don't want to do, which is some of those hard communications. And then if there's no change from the leadership team, only thing you can do is document it, because the leadership team needs to understand that HR is an advocate for the entire organization. And so if they don't see that value, then only thing we can do is document the information and hope that, and hope is like a general term, but hope that it doesn't come back against us. But if it does, then we'll have the documentation that we can show that we did attempt to fix this situation. Then we'll be having a different conversation at that point. Does that answer your question, PJ?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, perfect.
It's certainly a hard situation, I think, for anyone individual to be in, especially HR, when you are trying to be the advocate for the organization as well as for the employees.
Yeah, and I think in that conversation that you have with the leadership team, you could just really tell them the data and the risk we could be exposed to by not fixing the situation. And so our job is to give the facts and remain neutral and be supportive, but also document. I think it's important.
And I think that's a great point that you made. There are potential risks that you could be exposed to depending on what those concerns might be.
Yes.
Definitely an area to pay more attention to. Are we in compliance, depending on what it is?
Yeah, and then also, if it's something that is a disruptor, I think you can also put it in the employee handbook so that we, as a culture, they can know it's not tolerated. as a culture, and kind of remind them that this is what our employee handbook says. And, it would be great if we could try to follow what's in the employee handbook in order to have a productive workforce. Any other questions? Anything that is fuzzy that I can kind of go over? You all ready to go back to work on Monday and give us these strategic operations? They'll be happy that you came in with some numbers. Maybe not, but our job is to show and tell.
Precious, I do have a question. Is there a way, you talked a lot about analytics. What's the easiest way to collect a lot of this data, especially if you don't have a system that might be able to do it for you from a budget standpoint? Are there some easier ways to be able to collect this information? And what do you think based on what you need to collect? I know you talked about a lot of different areas that you should be collecting it in. What seems to be what are the most important, just a few that kind of stand out as really important ones, such as turnover or other areas where we should make sure that we're really focused on and being able to at least start getting some of that data together.
Yes, and I'm a big advocate of having an applicant tracking system because it's going to have a data component. Some of your LinkedIn and your Indeed and your job portals may have some data information for you, especially when it comes to talent acquisition. But I would also recommend advocating for a robust HRIS system that can help you with your metrics. And then the last suggestion I would say is your payroll model. Your payroll model should be able to pull different reports and data for your team as well. So while you're advocating, you may want to ask your payroll provider if they can provide active headcount. You should know your active headcount because they're on payroll. So your termination stats. If you have a benefit administration portal, you can get data from there. So I don't think data needs to come from one particular source. You might have to just use what you have and create a picture to share with the leadership team. That would be my answer to that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of different ways to get that data that you probably don't even think of, that it's already just out there for you.
Yes.
With the tools that we already use on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and you know what? Just conversation is data. So if someone goes out and on the internet and they say something good or bad about your organization, that is data. So whatever you have access to, I would use that to make a story for your leadership team. Because that's going to, remember, we're talking about getting a seat at the table. So if you don't have zero data, then what are we talking about? But if you have, there's some positive reviews, or there's some negative reviews stemming from the management department, and I think this could be havoc on the workforce. How do we start to correct that? Right. And so that's a conversation for the leadership team.
Data definitely can help us support initiatives, things that we know need to be done, and help support the business case for us doing that.
Absolutely. And Claudia says Glassdoor has data. But yeah, absolutely. And LinkedIn, I also think Indeed has data. So you can know how many people are doing video interviews, how many people are even applying for the position. So yeah, just use your resources, I would think. So it is 10:56. I am Precious Middleton, owner of HR Boutique and Business Services. I hope I didn't bore you today. I hope you learned a lot about data and the importance of data, the importance of speaking with your team and setting those expectations. If you need to reach out to me directly, I can be a helping hand to a busy HR department. Drop my pen. I can be a helping hand to a busy HR department. I have a background in business benefits administration, payroll support. I can assist you with enrollment, those busy periods. So let's talk about strategy at hrboutiqueservices.com. And PJ, thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Precious. We certainly appreciate it. A lot of great information, different things that we can be thinking about as HR professionals. When we're thinking about how we can be more strategic, we certainly appreciate your time today and all of the great information. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and have a fantastic weekend.